right.
welcome to the talk ASEAN Youth Forum with Plan International. Here with me, Rastra, the program manager of ASEAN Youth Forum, and also here with us is Ray from Plan International.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ray is in the Philippines, and I'm here
Yes,
in Indonesia. It's raining here.
and it's stormy here in Manila.
Hopefully, our life can go as smooth as
Smooth as
possible.
possible. Yes.
Okay, let's just go to the talk right away. As part of our lives are now online, we should start questioning if our online spaces are safe for all. Online is where some youth channel their participation and activism, and it is very important to ensure this participation can be facilitated safely. IWF in 2014 declared through the Young Declaration that we encourage meaningful participation of young people, especially the most vulnerable ones, including girls and young women. For today's live, we are inviting Ray from Plan International. Plan International has just released their current states of the world's girls report on the topic
Mhm,
of free to be online. The research
mhm,
involved 14,000 girls and young women. And the best part of the report is there are recommendations put into
mhm.
highlights. So the voices of the girls and young women are amplified loudly and further. So we know that online spaces are yet to be safe space for all, especially for girls and young women. We pretty much know that online harassment happened, but we don't know the exact data that relates to the girls and young women specifically. So Ray, my first question is, what are the key findings of the research?
All right. So just a brief background of the report. So every year since 2007, Plan International releases this kind of report. We call it State of the World's Girls Report. That examines the situation of girls and young women and the fulfillment of their rights. So for this year's report, as you mentioned, we focused on the situation of girls and young women online, particularly their experiences of harassment and how they are protected. So we did a research. There were two methodologies that we employed. One is quantitative data and then qualitative data. So there was a survey conducted, an online survey and phone interviews that we did with these girls from across different continents, of course, including the Asia and the Pacific. So among the findings is that there are more than half of these girls surveyed, meaning more than 7,000 girls that were interviewed or were part of the research said that they have been experiencing harassment and they have been abused online. And there are different forms of harassment and abuses that they experience. And later I can talk about it. So there were three findings. Aside from that, is one in four girls that experience harassment or abuse online feel that they are physically unsafe. So as a result of online harassment, it transcends to the online environment and they feel unsafe physically. So meaning they don't just feel unsafe in the online platform, but even they're not online anymore, they still feel unsafe. So we can see how serious the consequences are of these online harassment. So those were the two findings. And then the last one, of course, online abuse is silencing girls and young women, which I think is really bothersome and point of concern for us because what we want is to listen to girls and young women, their opinion, how they feel, what are their experiences, because we recognize that they're a very important voice in, let's say, developing programs and policies, that they have the capacity to provide the inputs to sound programs, government programs, and of course, primarily because it's their right. And this is what we would like to emphasize in Plan International, in ASEAN Youth Forum, in our work together, what we'd like to emphasize really is girls' rights to participate, to be heard, to be themselves. And of course, to some extent, it also affects their right to education or their right to better future or employment. Because, when you experience harassment online, the tendency is for them not to access it anymore, even if they feel that there is a great opportunity that the online platform is offering them to learn, to be informed, to get connected. But because
True.
of these harassment,
Yes.
they'd rather not get online, and they just keep quiet. So it affects them, and it also affects us, and it violates their rights. So apart from losing the opportunity, it's a violation of many of their rights, including, of course, the right to protection. Yeah. So basically, those were the three major findings. So maybe later in our discussion, Raster, we can talk about the other findings if you have any follow-up question.
True. I guess before we go into the harassment online, the types and
Yes.
also the experience and how the impact extends, it's happening online, but also it has impacts on offline. It's
Mm-hmm.
wow. But let's just discuss about the third key finding, which is like online abuse is silencing girls, and
Mm-hmm.
we know that there are a lot of violations of rights there, and basically
Mm-hmm.
it's limiting freedom. Can you explain more? I mean, like you've touched a little bit on it, but can you explain more of it from like a right based perspective, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense that you mentioned a bit about online platform offers a lot of opportunities, but girls
Mm-hmm.
tend to be hesitant because of the harassment, and of course there are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, besides the rights to the protection, there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that are being
Yes.
violated. Can you dig deeper on
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah, in the study, there was a set of findings that refer to girls recognizing the importance of being online. So they said, it's important for us because it allows us to keep in touch with our friends, to communicate with our families. There are also job opportunities online. They need it to spread and also acquire information, so to learn, to keep updated with current affairs, to interact with a wide range of people, and to build online communities. So these are the benefits of being online that they have identified that were reflected in the study, or in this report that we're talking about. And it has become more important now during the pandemic, because even education has been, or it has shifted to the online platform. So when we talk about online harassment, so we talk about the right to protection being violated, of course, because they need to UNCRC, for instance, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the SIDO, they state that girls and young women, they have the right to be protected at all times in different platforms, including online. So when they experience abuse and harassment, obviously that right is violated. And then as a consequence of that, as we mentioned, um, even if they see this as an important platform for them to get connected, and then they'd rather not get into it just because of the harassment that they're experiencing. Naturally, of course, if you don't feel safe in one platform or in one place, you'd avoid that. So that's the tendency. And when that happens, the opportunity that they're supposed to have, let's say job opportunity, they lose that. And it's a violation of their right to um, acquire a decent job. And it would have an impact on their future if that happens. Instead of them, getting that chance to better employment, they lose that. And then, of course, another thing is activism, to be heard, to express themselves, because there are forms of harassment that happen not entirely related to what they post, but because of who they are, gender based violence, just because they're a girl
I
or
see.
member of the LGBTIQ community, or because of their race, because of their color, they're being abused. And their right to be free to be themselves, it's being violated when they're harassed. And then, of course, there are also forms of harassment that were reflected in the study, or in this report, that happen against girls who are more vocal about their opinion, who are activists. So there are more harassment against them. And it's a violation of their right to participate in discussions in social affairs, to express themselves. So and as we said, the right to education also, to some extent, can be affected by online harassment. Instead of them learning, acquiring more information, if they avoid this platform, there's area where they could learn, then it's tantamount to violation of their right to education. So there are several rights. So in fact,
Yeah, the situation is very alarming for young women and girls. There are a lot of
yes,
lists like that you just mentioned: the right to be protected, the right to participate, to be heard,
yes.
and to some extent, the right to have more opportunities to be better
Mhm.
at life. That is very alarming. And
Mhm.
I guess you've mentioned several things about the types of harassment. There are a lot of unique things that you mentioned, that people are being girls and young women are being attacked because they're women, maybe because they're
Mhm.
also part of queer communities, or because of their ethnicity or race. I guess
Mhm.
can we go into the types of the
Mhm.
harassment they're facing online, that maybe you can explain more about?
Yeah. So in the study, there are several types of harassment that they experience, and the most prevalent, of course, I'd like to mention a few. 39% of the girls who were surveyed said that they experienced body shaming.
Mm.
So maybe because they're fat, they're thin, body shaming, or because of what they wear, how they look, how they dress
Or
up.
their hair,
Um,
maybe.
yes, their hair. So I mean, these can affect them in so many ways. Later, we can see the impact of these. And then there's stalking. It also happens. 32% of them said that they're being stalked. Racist comments, there are racist comments. And then there is threats of sexual violence. I think this is also one of the most alarming forms of violence, the threats to sexual violence, sexual harassment. So there's a threat to sexual violence, and there's an actual sexual harassment that happens online. And then embarrassment, threats to physical violence, there are anti-LGBTIQ comments, and then the most prevalent form of harassment is abusive and insulting language. So these are the forms of harassment that happen online. And in the report, if you see it, what I'd like in the report is that when you read it, it's like really talking to the girls and young women who were surveyed, because most part of it, it highlights direct quotation from girls, and you will see even some screen caps of how harassment happen online. So it's really bothering, because as I mentioned, harassment happens, these forms of harassment happen not necessarily sometimes because of what you say, it's just because of who you are. And I think we have a fundamental problem, because of that. Because sometimes you can understand when harassment happens, because I'm not saying it's an excuse, of course, but when you say something and then there's someone at the other end who's against with what you said, of course what we promote is respect. What we promote is for us to listen to each other, to argue in a reasonable manner. Um, but sometimes you just go online, you sit there, and then you are being harassed for how you look, and yeah. So I think that's also a fundamental problem. As I always say, this is marginalization
Uh,
in a different way. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess it happens a lot. I mean, like nowadays when we go into Twitter and you post something, you participate in a discussion, and some people, I mean, don't like your ideas. They don't criticize the
Mhm.
idea. They directly
Yeah,
attack you
that's true.
personally. That is
Mhm.
such a problematic that we need to, solve. And
Mhm.
you've talked about the impact, and the key finding is this harassment that happening online impacts the physical realm that we are living in.
Mhm.
So let's go dive deeper into that. What are the implications of the harassment
Mhm.
online beyond the online spaces, Ray?
Yeah, so there are different forms or impact of this harassment. Some feel, as I mentioned, physically unsafe. As we mentioned at the beginning, it transcends, that feeling of being unsafe, not only when they're online, but also when they're offline. So they carry it. So what they experience online, for instance, I'm here, I'm on Facebook, and then I get a negative comment. Even after this, even if I log out, they still feel unsafe. So it impacts them in a different level. And then some of them, they have problem at school. Then trouble finding or keeping a job. Of course, if you experience harassment, you're bothered. You have later we will see they have low self-esteem, so it affects them how they perform in school or how they perform in their workplaces. Problems with friends or family, and others. So the two most major impacts are one, having low self-esteem or loss of confidence, and mental or emotional stress. In fact, the other impacts that I mentioned, I think, are the result of these two major impact. Because if you lose your confidence, if you lose your self-esteem, the tendency is, as we mentioned, you'll perform poorly in school or in the workplace, or you will, not be confident enough to relate with other people, with your family and friends, or unconsciously you are absorbing. Girls and young women, they absorb what other people would tell them. If they see that, some people tell them you're ugly, you don't have the right to speak, what you're saying is wrong, you're, I don't know, you're a bad person just because you're a lesbian or gay or queer, and unconsciously they absorb it, so it affects them in different level. That's why there's mental and emotional stress that they experience. And sometimes, I mean, some people would tell these young women and girls, if you don't want to be harassed, just stop going online. Just
That's literally
avoid.
limitation, limiting
Exactly.
and narrowing,
Yeah.
women's mobility, I guess. It's just like a
Mhm.
limiting freedom.
And we realize, girls and young women, they don't really have so much choice. First, it's their right, and why, as you said, why would people limit them, and not give them that right to go online? Second, if education has shifted to the online platform, then inevitably they need to be there. And right now, especially when most of the information are available online, then they really have to be there. And right now, the platform for communication, getting in touch with people, to keep them sane. I mean, from this situation, to get connected with friends and family, is also through online. So if this platform is not safe, then it will have a huge negative consequence on girls and young women, because they need to be there. It's their right, and they need it because it offers a lot of opportunities for learning, for job, for information, for activism. So what we're saying is that it has to be safe. The burden doesn't doesn't need to, or it shouldn't shift to girls and young women,
Yes.
but it has to be to duty bearers. Later, we will see who they identified should be responsible in making the online platform safe.
Well, I just would like to echo the fact that, whatever that they received in through social media, online,
Mm,
they internalize it, like they
mm,
install it subconsciously, and definitely impact for their lives. And
mm,
you mentioned that the one that is supposed to be responsible is not the victim. It's not like the
mm,
young women or the girls. People always think that, okay, if it's your problem, then you need to solve it. But the thing is, it's
mm,
not uh, only the issue of the girls and young women. I guess it's, as a society, we are responsible
that's
for it,
true.
right?
Mm,
And then uh, like I mentioned before, I guess the best part of the survey or the research is the fact that it highlights recommendation. So the research is to extend what girls are thinking, what their demands are, and what they recommend. So can
mm.
you briefly highlight them?
Yeah, sure. So in the study, they were asked like who they think should be responsible. So if you're experiencing these harassment, who do you think should be responsible in keeping the online environment safe? And they've identified a few. So across all these continents, the main responsible institution that they've identified are the social media institutions. They also identified the police, the government, civil society organizations.
Definitely.
Yeah, as you said, it has to be all of us. other social media users, of course, there has to be some mutual respect. All of us should be educated about digital citizenship, how to communicate, how to argue with respect and all that. But primarily, they address their concern, their call to action to social media companies. And among their calls to action is one to create stronger, more effective, and accessible reporting mechanism. Because right now, for those who are active in Facebook, we can report, right? We can
Mm.
report the comment. But they'd like it to be strengthened, or maybe they'd like other social media platforms to have that kind of option as well. I'm not sure if Instagram or WhatsApp they
Uh,
have that. You're
for
more,
WhatsApp, I'm not sure. Like by
yeah,
Instagram, yeah, they have some option, but for website, it's just like you block or yeah, only
yeah.
block,
So
and it's
what
not
they
that
want
well.
is a stronger and more effective and accessible reporting mechanism. Second is to strengthen and improve content moderation. We also have that kind of function on Facebook, right? Like you can
Mm.
report a particular comment, whether it's racist or something.
Targeting
But
specific group of people. Yeah.
yes, but they'd like it to be strengthened and maybe some form of content moderation, so that it doesn't get out there anymore. Of course, there's that debate about freedom of expression versus freedom online, but we know that when you analyze these kinds of policies, it redounds to what would serve the best interest of the most vulnerable, which is in this case girls and young women. Third is to work with girls and young women for policy and technical solutions. As we always say, nothing about us without us. So what they want is to be heard, because they're the ones who's experiencing harassment, so they'd know better what solutions should be there, and they'd like to be heard. Like, we have ideas on how we can do this better. Please give us a chance, a platform where we can make these suggestions. So they'd like to be consulted. They'd like to be more involved in coming up with policies and technical solutions. Collect and publish gender and age disaggregated data for, so appropriate policies and mechanisms can be designed based on these data. Hold perpetrators of gender-based online harassment to account. And I think that's the most important, because it doesn't end in reporting.
Yeah.
The question you always ask is, so now what happens to the report? So these are some, but they have a few other recommendations. Plan International has launched a campaign. I think, Raser, we can share the link to the video. I can share it with you so that others can see the video, where young girls came up with an open letter. They could sign up to it. And we encourage ASEAN Youth Forum partners and networks and all those who are watching us now. Later, we will send the link, we'll post it, and then you can sign up to that online campaign. And one of the results is that Instagram has committed to consult girls
Mm.
to come up with a policy solution. So that's one campaign success, but it has to continue, of course. The fight, as they say, continues.
All right. For the link of the video, we'll share it in the Facebook Live later on. And if people have any question, they can throw it in the comment section. We will replay them also personally,
Mm-hmm.
Yari, in the comment section later after the live. So I would like to echo again that there is currently open letter, Stand with Girls Against Online Abuse. You can sign the letter through plan/international.org/sign the
Yes.
letter. The complete link and the right link
We'll
we
just
will be
post it.
yeah, we'll post
Yeah.
later after the live. So we really encourage you guys to sign up and to support and stand in solidarity with girls all over the globe. This is like the global movements, right, Ray?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
guess that is all. But before, I guess I really like the phrase like nothing about us is without us. So
Mm.
really, for youth people out there, participate and then engage and organize, so that there is no policy about us that
Mm.
is made without us. Thank you,
Mm.
Ray, for the insight.
Thank
And
you.
anything that you would like to add briefly?
Um, if there, maybe it's, I mean, our audience now are young people. So I hope you're not experiencing these kinds of harassment. But I hope, until we have these policies and we continue, of course, we will continue the campaign and I invite you to join us in this campaign. Let's continue to learn about digital citizenship. Let's try to, of course, there are also ways that we can protect ourselves online, although we're saying it's not just our responsibility. It has to be a responsibility, of different sectors, primarily of social media institutions. But, let's keep ourselves safe, like practical things like let's not share, some photos to strangers and all that. Basically, let's also do what we can um, to protect ourselves, to learn about digital citizenship and teach others about it, especially girls and young women around us. And we will continue to institutionalize our reforms
Yes.
to keep the online platform safe for everyone so that there will really be, indeed, freedom online.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. But we, of course, we have, things that we can do to protect ourselves. But in case
Mm,
it happens to us, I guarantee, I totally believe that it's not our fault. It's so stop blaming in yourself if you experience this, and because blaming ourselves and I mean, like, it's not our fault. So the
mm,
fault is the people out there.
mm.
And let's hold everybody else. We are all accountable. So thank you so much, Ray, for the insight. I believe that after listening to our conversation, you wonder if you could do something about it, about the online
Mm.
harassment that majorly impact girls and young women. We encourage you to support the open letter by girls going to plan-international.org/,
Mhm.
sign strip the strip letter. We copy paste the the link below after the live ended. And
Mhm.
from now, let's commit to provide safe spaces for women online. You've heard the impacts. It has adverse impacts in the physical spaces and the very lives of the women. For now, we also encourage you to learn more about the cyber threats, online harassment, gender-based violence
Mm.
happening online, and so that you can identify when it occurs. Like Ray mentioned, digital citizenship, know the ethic in participating in online spaces. I guess that's all for now. Thank you for joining us and
Thank
listening to our
you.
talk. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ray.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rasta. Bye.